Speaker, today I and others met with Sebastian Lai, the son of Jimmy Lai, who languishes in prison, the ex-owner of Apple Daily. I remind my right honourable friend that he is a British citizen and a British passport holder, and he now faces a trial at the end of the year in which he can be incarcerated under the new national security laws for life. For what? For publishing truth to power. Will my right honourable friend please now direct the rest of his government, particularly the Foreign Office, now to warn the Chinese government, if they persist with this, he, and alongside the Americans who have already done this, will threaten that the use of common law in Hong Kong will be taken away.
That was Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, Conservative member of the UK Parliament, asking his government to act in securing Hong Kong pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily founder Jimmy Lai's release in January 2023. Today, Jimmy Lai is standing trial for the 56th day. He is facing up to life in prison for conspiring to collude with foreign forces, a crime under the national security law Beijing imposed on Hong Kong to suppress democracy protests in 2019. On December 17, 2023, a day before the trial began, the UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron issued a press release saying that he was gravely concerned at the politically motivated prosecution of British national Jimmy Lai and called for his release. The day after, the US State Department also condemned the prosecution.
I'd like to take you to Hong Kong. Jimmy Lai's trial now underway. I saw the State Department statement on it just the other day, condemning the prosecution. That said, does the State Department believe Jimmy Lai has any chance at all of getting a fair trial in what many are calling a sham trial?
So I would say that we do strongly condemn the prosecution of Jimmy Lai, a pro-democracy advocate and media owner. He's been prosecuted under the national security law that Beijing imposed on Hong Kong. We call for his immediate and unconditional release. And yes, of course, we have deep concerns about the deterioration in protection for human rights and fundamental freedoms in Hong Kong, and that includes the rule of law.
Do you think your call for his immediate release will be answered?
I will just say that we will make clear our position. We will make clear our priorities. We don't think he should have been detained in the first place, and we think he should be released immediately.
One more quickly. He's a devout Catholic.
As we see more governments coming out in support of Jimmy Lai, the world is left to wonder, will he ever be free? And would he forgive those who've done him wrong or betrayed him, including his former colleagues who are testifying against him right now? I'm your host, Ira Shi. You're listening to The Divide, where we look into the factors that set us apart as human beings. This week, we dive deeper into China's persecution against media tycoon Jimmy Lai, and if there's any chance of him being free one day.
There's a great two-man play to be done, and it's going to be Mark Simon and Jimmy Lai. And it starts in the fall of 2019, where I go into the room and I say, Jimmy, people think you should leave. I'm not leaving. Get out of here. And a month later, Jimmy, I was talking to the diplomat here, and, he said he thinks you should really leave. I don't want to talk about that. We have lunch with another group of people. The guy says, well, Jimmy, you should leave. As we're walking out, Jimmy goes, stop setting up people telling me to get out of here, because I did. And all through that time, until I left in April. In fact, I think it was 2 or 3 days before I left, Jimmy, time's getting, 2 or 3 days before I left, I went to Jimmy again. And I said, boss, you should really get out of here. I said, if you leave, you can do so much more. And I said, Mark, stop it. Just stop it. And we were having the conversation, and, and he kept saying to me, who else should leave? Well, we should make Simon Lee leave, get this other person out. You got to get out. That's what he started telling me. He started saying that, you should consider it. But that's all he said to me. He didn't say anything else. We didn't talk about it. He said, you should consider it. He said, don't get caught. And I said, okay, boss, But he never really pushed me on it. But I was pushing him all the time. I was pushing him hard. And I would call him because he wasn't in jail yet. We would talk because it was around May when he said, we said, I can't come back. They had taken the shares of the company, frozen his bank accounts. They were frozen the bank accounts. They took the shares in the spring of the next year. They had frozen his bank accounts. Bad things were happening. You know what I'm saying? We were starting to see a lot of stuff, a lot of police activity. People never understand that when before they arrest you, you're kind of seeing all the activity behind the scenes. Before the actual arrest happens and you hit the papers, there's a lot of activity going on, and we could see it. We could feel it. And so I was talking to him. I must have had 12, 13 conversations about him leaving. And then when they arrested him in the 20th of August, I still remember it, I said to myself, I'm never going to talk to him about it again because he can't leave.
It was an early morning on August 9 on 2020, Jimmy Lai was arrested by Hong Kong police under the national security law for allegedly colluding with foreign forces. Then Asia Program Coordinator at the Committee to Protect Journalists Steven Butler said that the arrest of Jimmy Lai bears out the worst fear that Hong Kong's national security law would be used to suppress critical pro-democracy opinion and restrict press freedom.
Yeah, I talked about that with him. I asked him whether he had considered leaving Hong Kong. This was in 2019 that I met him, when it was very clear the authorities were unhappy about him, to say the least. But he said, well, Hong Kong is my home. He'd lived there for a long time, and I think I don't think he imagined at that time that the Apple Daily would necessarily be closed down the way that it was. But I think he felt he needed to stay there, because it was his home, because other people depended on him. If he had left Hong Kong, his business empire would have collapsed instantly, I think. But I think, he left China as a young man and made his business success in Hong Kong, and I think he just didn't want to leave again. He could have gone to Taiwan possibly, or maybe to the United States. He could have gone many places, and he was extremely wealthy, and so he could afford to go where he wanted to. But he just he gave a very strong sense to me that Hong Kong is my home, and this is where I will stay.
He wasn't going to leave, but he used to say to me, he goes, Mark, I can't be an asshole. He said, I can't be the guy with Apple Daily who basically has been the megaphone for this movement. Not promoting it, not pushing it, but the megaphone for it, the platform for it. I can't be that guy who marched with these students. I can't be that guy who went to the people of Hong Kong and constantly laid this out in front of them and then walk away. I can't be that guy. Even if it was just a platform I was on, even if I was just offering them a place to talk, I offered it to them when nobody else would. And I had the option not to offer it to him, and I didn't do it. Jimmy decided to stay. And Jimmy knew that maybe he would die in jail. Jimmy was like, well, they put me in jail and I die in jail. He said, I'll get to read a lot. I'll get to do stuff. They put me in jail. They'll put me in jail. I'm fine with that. He goes, I've lived a long life. I'm not gonna bend for these guys. Since that time, when he started to be arrested from the 20th of August onward, we'd already started, he knew he was going to jail at that point in time. But does he want to die in jail? No. Would he be released? Yes. Will he beg to be released? No.
As I start to piece together Jimmy Lai's personality, whether morally, socially, or intellectually, here's former Hong Kong journalist Steve Vines, who knows Jimmy Lai personally and witnessed his friend being sent to jail.
He's a very extraordinary character. He's very, it's well known that he's a big guy. He's a large person, and he has a large personality. The reason I think the authorities hate him so much is that he's totally fearless. most people of his age, and he's in his late 70s, most people of his age, he came to Hong Kong from the Chinese mainland, famously being smuggled over in a boat, and he made his fortune entirely out of his own resources. So he's a person of great determination. I remember going to see him, well, I very vividly remember going to see him when I was involved in starting a satirical magazine called Spike. And he said to me in his typically blunt way, and he said it very quickly, "Oh, this won't work. This is a complete waste of time. There's no point in doing an English language magazine like this." And he saw me looking very deflated and sort of being a bit upset by how brutal he was in his assessment, which incidentally he was right about. But having done that, he offered us resources. The magazine ended up being printed on his printing press. We used the distributor that the Next Group was using to distribute its publications, and he offered us various other forms of assistance, because his view was, look, I've told you bluntly where this is going, but, here's resources, give it a try and see what happens. I mean, this is typical of the man. He's very shrewd, he's very brutal, and he's also very practical. A lot of people who were involved in the democracy movement, or even not involved in the democracy movement, just have been prominent in Hong Kong for expressing opinions, have left. Jimmy Lai had the option to leave. He holds a British passport. There was nothing stopping him before he was arrested from leaving and saying, look, it's too dangerous for me to be here. But he took the view that it was his responsibility. He has a sense of mission, I think.
A sense of mission is what set people apart. It is why Jimmy Lai is so different.
What I think people have to remember about Jimmy Lai is one thing. The guy basically stood up against his own self-interest in the short term, his personal self-interest. He lost his company. They've confiscated his bank accounts. But he did this for over 30 years because he believes in democracy and he believes in Hong Kong. Jimmy was not causing trouble in China. And the other thing, too, that's so unique about him as a leader, it's really why it's hard to place him, is he wasn't looking for political power. He didn't have somebody he was trying to put in political power. He was just trying to protect Hong Kong. And I know that. That's what I'm saying.
In my research for this program, I asked several people about how they think Jimmy Lai would view his former Apple Daily employees testifying against him.
He has apparently said to them, look, nobody can save me. The outcome of the trial is predetermined. But save yourselves if you can. If it helps you to get a reduced sentence by testifying against me, just do it. So, he's a very hard person to undermine because he's not afraid. I think when you take away fear from people in the political arena, they become very dangerous to the authorities because they rule by fear. And when they have ceased to intimidate people like Jimmy Lai, and he's an exceptional person, they get even more angry. And that's why they're almost obsessive in their pursuit of Jimmy Lai. Incidentally, he's not only, he's on trial at the moment for collusion with foreign forces, but they keep adding charges. But he's already in jail for other offences, which in a democratic jurisdiction wouldn't be offences at all.
Jimmy Lai's ongoing national security trial is more than just a legal battle. It turns out that it is a reflection of the profound divisions between authoritarianism and democracy. Jimmy Lai, a billionaire who willingly sacrificed his freedom for a cause, embodies these deep differences. Through my research and conversations with individuals like former Hong Kong journalist Steve Vines, it is clear that a sense of mission drives Lai, and it was this commitment to his principles that sets him apart. And the damage of this trial on the people of Hong Kong, both who have left and who have chosen to stay, is insurmountable to a point where if you begin to investigate, you would be enraged.
I thought immediately after the national security law was enacted, and this was, I now think is stupid, but I have to be honest, I thought at the time that there may well be a way in which things would get worse, but not that bad. But it very rapidly became clear that if you're a journalist in Hong Kong, which I was, you wouldn't be able to work anymore. So, I was a presenter of a public affairs television program on Radio Television Hong Kong. I was on a radio program. Both of these got shut down. I was a contributor to Apple Daily. Well, obviously that didn't continue after that got shut down. I'd written a book about the Hong Kong movement in 2019, 2020, and that was banned from bookshelves. So, the space to be able to operate in Hong Kong was disappearing very rapidly. And to be honest with you, the most worrying aspect of all of this was, as I saw friends and colleagues going to jail, I thought, well, they've obviously got a list, and I frankly don't know whether I'm on it, but do you want to take the risk? So, like many people, I just concluded you have to think, what is the risk of being here and what is the risk of going? The risk of going is that you leave the place that you really love and you never wanted to leave. The risk of staying is you go to jail. It's a very big risk.
The challenging ordeal of leaving a place you once called home has obviously taken a toll on people like Vines.
It was difficult on a number of levels. Obviously, emotionally, because not only, logistically was it hard just to sort of terminate a very complex life that I had in Hong Kong. But, at the back of my mind, and I know this because I speak to other people who are here all the time about this, there was a sense of guilt. You've run away while other people are facing jail. It's a burden that you have to bear. And so, for, I think, at least the first year that I was out of Hong Kong, I was not in a good place. I was very unsettled. I was very worried about all sorts of things. But, you have to find a way of dealing with things rather than just sitting there and moaning about them. So my way of dealing with things is to become active in advocacy groups, trying to restore freedom in Hong Kong. What effect they're having, I really can't tell you, but I think that we're obliged to use the freedom that we have outside Hong Kong to do this work. So I spend a lot of my time on that, and it's rewarding both because I strongly believe in the restoration of freedom in Hong Kong, but it's also rewarding because it brings me in touch with some of the very fine people who are now living outside Hong Kong. The overseas Hong Kong community is cram full of people of extremely high levels of talent and integrity. And, to be in that circle is a great privilege.
Vines channeling his grief into advocating for the freedom of Hong Kong is truly the embodiment of Hong Kong's spirit, as its people defy China's rule in their own way.
The situation in Hong Kong is really unbearably grim. It's an unusual situation in which you see a society which had high levels of liberty, not high levels of democracy, being dismantled. And in the middle of all this gloom, it is really important to remember that it's being exercised by a dictatorship that I'm very confident won't last. I don't know when it will end, but it won't last because dictatorships are inherently fragile. And I think the Chinese Communist Party is inherently fragile, which is one of the reasons why they are so extreme in cracking down on the opposition. So, I don't think the situation is hopeless, but then I don't think it's going to change in the near future.
You're listening to The Divide on Radio Taiwan International, and a special thanks to Steve Vines, Steve Butler, and Mark Simon.